6,000 calories. Where am I going to get all that energy from? Trail running through mountains costs energy. How many calories do I need, and where does it come from? I really just wanted to find out. So I'm currently running around 6 minutes per kilometer. I weigh around 80 kilos. My pack here is another 2. So that means that running at this speed will cost me something like 85 calories per kilometer. Now, if I was to do this at this speed up a 10% gradient hill, that number would be more like 140 calories per kilometer. And the thing that complicates matters a little bit more is that running on rough trails will cost more energy than running on a smooth asphalt surface. Our bodies always need a certain amount of energy. Even lying on our couch, our bodies consume a small number of calories just to keep our brain and other organs going. But when we run, we need to expend several times that amount. So the amount of calories I burn depend on my speed and weight and the difficulty of the terrain. So for a flat 10k in 1 hour, I would expect to burn around 800 calories. At the start of May, I'm in a race at Innsbruck, which is 67 kilometers with 2,500 meters climb. That should cost me anything up to 6,000 calories. Where am I going to get all of that energy from? An ultra trail requires a lot of energy. With the length of the course, the number of climbs and the mixed terrain, Innsbruck could cost me anything up to 6,000 calories. That's enough food for 2 days, unless somebody buys me an ice cream every kilometer. In other words, so where do I get all that from? I can draw from 4 sources of energy. There's muscle glycogen, liver glycogen, things I eat while I'm running, and my body fat. So let's have a look at muscle glycogen. When we eat, any fat we don't need is stored as fat, and any carbohydrates we don't need are stored as glycogen, up to a limit. The glycogen store acts as a reserve of energy kept for when we need it. Most of it is stored directly in our skeletal muscles. When we are active, our muscles want to use some carbohydrate in the form of glucose. The muscles convert their own glycogen stores into glucose and then use that for energy, together with a small amount of glucose directly from the bloodstream. But the muscle glycogen store is limited, and with enough exercise it can become depleted. So how much muscle glycogen do I actually have? Well, the average person should have around 1,600 calories worth. But there are 2 problems with that number. The first is that no one is ever really average. Especially if you've been doing a lot of training, your body should have developed the capacity to store quite a bit more glycogen than that. And the second problem is that I will only use glycogen in the muscles that are used for running. Glycogen stores in other muscles will hardly be used at all. So, for example, the glycogen in my forearms is not really available for running. Unless I do a lot of... However, as I can't exactly know how much muscle glycogen I really have, I will keep using the 1,600 calorie number. Let's have a look at liver glycogen. Our livers also contain a small store of glycogen. This is used to regulate blood glucose. As we've seen, during exercise, your muscles will take some glucose from the bloodstream. If blood glucose falls too low, the liver will convert some of its glycogen into glucose and release that into the bloodstream. This maintains blood glucose at the correct level. The amount of glycogen in the liver varies, but it can be anything up to 400 calories. But your other organs, including your brain, also want some glucose. So it's not all available for running. If your liver glycogen runs very low, it can make use of proteins and fats to make up the difference, but you may feel a large loss of energy. This is called hitting the wall, and the wall is very often the ground. Well, luckily we can eat while we're running. Eaten carbohydrates are converted into blood glucose, which has the effect of sparing some of the liver glycogen so that that lasts a lot longer. How much you can eat in an hour and what that should be is very individual. Personally, I can manage about 280 calories per hour. So if my race in Innsbruck lasted 10 hours, that would give me 2,800 calories, right? Unfortunately, it's not that simple. Like many people, I get digestive problems, usually after about 5 or 6 hours of running, and that makes it hard to keep eating. As somebody once said, ultramarathons can be an eating competition as much as a running competition. My stomach is closed, so that means I have to make it on whatever reserves I have left inside me. But anyway, even if we assume 2,000 calories from food and 2,000 calories from glycogen, I still need to get 2,000 calories from somewhere else. I have sitting here in my body enough energy to run over 20 of these ultramarathons, over 100,000 calories, all in fat. When we're moving slowly, we get a large part of our energy from fat as well as from glucose. As our exercise intensity increases, that fat contribution rises for a while up to a certain point, but after that point it declines rapidly, falling to almost zero. That point where we get the maximum contribution from fat is at an exercise intensity somewhat below our aerobic threshold. Now, where my aerobic threshold is and how much energy I can get from fat will depend entirely on my metabolic fitness. I know from my calculations that I need at least 200 calories per hour, and hopefully I can get more in order to conserve as much glycogen as I can. This is why I and many other endurance runners train at low intensities in order to improve these things as far as we can, as I discussed in some other videos. Well, it would be easy to say, well, that's the answer. Just stay at that pace, at that intensity level, and you'll get the most use of your fat supply. Unfortunately, in a trail run, it's not that easy. There are quite a number of climbs, and it is hard to stay at a low intensity exercise level when you're going up a 25% hill. So, for example, on this hill, which is maybe 20%, I have to go at this speed if I want to keep my workload below my aerobic threshold. It's not very fast at all. Basically, it's a gentle hike. So for the question of where does my energy come from to do all this running, well, there it is. Some from glycogen, some from food, and some from my body fat, maybe. But maybe it'll all work out, and maybe it will be a lovely day. And if it is, I'll see you out there.